At 2 a.m., Detective Elliot Hayes found her tiny handprints on the wall, smeared with blood, too small to fight back, too innocent to deserve what happened to her. Hey, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, please subscribe for more shocking crime stories, and hit the bell icon. The darkest truth are yet to come. The night was uncharacteristically quiet in Meadowbrook, a suburban town where nothing ever seemed out of place. Detective Elliot Hayes, a seasoned investigator known for his sharp instincts, sat alone in his dimly lit office when the shrill ring of his phone shattered the stillness. On the other end, a panicked voice delivered an urgent message. There's been a death. You need to come now. The address belonged to a modest house on Maple Street, one that Elliot had never visited but would soon haunt him forever. When he arrived, the scene was chaotic yet eerily silent. Yellow police tape fluttered in the cold breeze as paramedics worked quickly, their faces pale with shock. In the center of the living room lay the lifeless body of a 3-year-old girl, her tiny frame bruised and bound grotesquely with electrical wires. Her eyes were closed, but her small hands remained clenched, as though she'd fought desperately before succumbing. Nearby, her mother, Rebecca Monroe, sat slumped against the wall, sobbing uncontrollably. She repeated the same phrase over and over. It was an accident. She fell down the stairs. But Elliot's trained eye caught inconsistencies immediately. The bruises weren't consistent with a fall. They were too deliberate, too widespread. And then there was the blood stain smeared jaggedly across the wall, too calculated to match Rebecca's clumsy explanation. As he knelt beside the child's body, his stomach churned with dread. Something dark had happened here, something far worse than an accident. Whispering under his breath so only he could hear, Elliot muttered, "This isn't an accident." The camera pans slowly to the bloodstain on the wall, lingering just long enough to make the audience's skin crawl. Who did this? Why wasn't anyone listening earlier? And what secrets lay hidden behind the walls of this seemingly ordinary home? With these questions hanging heavy in the air, the screen fades to black, leaving viewers desperate for answers. To truly grasp the magnitude of this tragedy, one must first meet Emily Monroe, a bright-eyed toddler whose laughter once filled even the darkest corners of her world. At just 3 years old, Emily radiated joy. She loved painting flowers with bold strokes of color, chasing butterflies in the backyard during summer afternoons, and cuddling up to her grandmother, Margaret Lane, for bedtime stories. For much of her early life, Margaret had been her primary caregiver, a loving figure who shielded her from the turbulence of her mother Rebecca's struggles. Rebecca's battle with addiction had left scars not only on herself but also on Emily's fragile existence. Custody battles raged for months, with Margaret fighting tirelessly to keep Emily safe from harm. Eventually, however, Rebecca completed rehab and regained custody, promising a fresh start. Everyone hoped this marked the beginning of a better chapter for both mother and child. Yet, beneath the surface, cracks began to form almost immediately. Looking back now, it's clear that Margaret's fears were justified. Emily's transition back to her mother's care wasn't seamless. Instead, it was fraught with tension and instability. Though no one realized it at the time, this decision set the stage for unimaginable horrors yet to unfold. What started as hope quickly spiraled into despair, leaving Emily vulnerable to forces beyond her control. As weeks turned into months, subtle signs of trouble began to emerge. Neighbors whispered among themselves about the little girl they saw playing outside, her face often bearing unexplained injuries. A black eye here, a fractured arm there. Teachers grew increasingly alarmed, noting how Emily frequently arrived at school hungry or wearing clothes stained beyond neglect. Concerned citizens called Child Protective Services, CPS, multiple times, hoping someone would intervene. Margaret herself filed numerous complaints, presenting photographic evidence of Emily's injuries alongside heartfelt pleas for help. She described changes in Emily's behavior, how she'd become withdrawn, fearful, and anxious overnight. Despite her efforts, each case was closed without action due to insufficient, conclusive evidence. Frustration mounted as Margaret watched the system fail her granddaughter repeatedly. Each dismissal felt like another nail in Emily's coffin, building tension and despair for anyone witnessing the unfolding tragedy. What made matters worse was the lack of accountability. CPS caseworkers cited protocol and red tape, claiming they couldn't act without definitive proof. But to Margaret, this excuse rang hollow. How many warnings did they need? How many photos of bruises and broken bones would it take before someone listened? These questions gnawed at her relentlessly, driving her to desperation. Just when things seemed bleak enough, Rebecca introduced a new figure into their lives, Devon Cole, a man whose charm masked a sinister core. Friends immediately sensed danger. His piercing gaze and volatile temper screamed red flags. They urged Rebecca not to let him near Emily, but she brushed off their warnings with hollow reassurances. "He's good for us." What no one realized then was that Devon had a sordid past riddled with domestic violence charges. Behind closed doors, his control over Rebecca tightened like a vice. He dictated her every move, cutting her off from friends and family alike. Tension simmered beneath the surface as viewers pieced together the chilling implications. Devon wasn't just a bad influence, he was a predator biding his time. His presence brought a suffocating darkness into their home. Neighbors reported hearing shouting matches late at night, followed by eerie silence. Emily became quieter, her once bright eyes clouded with fear. It was as if the light within her was slowly being extinguished, piece by piece, until all that remained was a shell of the happy child she used to be. One fateful morning, Emily shuffled into daycare clutching her backpack. Her usual spark dimmed. Her teacher gasped upon noticing rope burns circling her delicate wrists. When questioned gently, Emily whispered, "I didn't listen." Those 3 words reverberated through the classroom like a gunshot, freezing everyone present. The teacher wasted no time reporting the incident to CPS, but once again, bureaucracy failed miserably. The caseworker accepted Rebecca's flimsy excuse that Emily had tied herself up pretending to be a cowboy and dismissed the report without further investigation. Suspense thickened as the audience grasped the horrifying truth. Nobody was stepping in to save this innocent child. Every ignored warning pushed Emily closer to the brink of catastrophe. Fueled by desperation, Margaret stormed into the CPS office, clutching folders filled with damning evidence. Photos of Emily's injuries stared back accusingly, accompanied by detailed accounts of behavioral changes, how she'd become withdrawn, fearful, and anxious overnight. Margaret pleaded with trembling hands, begging them to see what she saw, a child trapped in a nightmare. What no one realized then was that Devon had a sordid past riddled with domestic violence charges. Behind closed doors, his control over Rebecca tightened like a vice. He dictated her every move, cutting her off from friends and family alike. Tension simmered beneath the surface as viewers pieced together the chilling implications. Devon wasn't just a bad influence, he was a predator biding his time. His presence brought a suffocating darkness into their home. Neighbors reported hearing shouting matches late at night, followed by eerie silence. Emily became quieter, her once bright eyes clouded with fear. It was as if the light within her was slowly being extinguished, piece by piece, until all that remained was a shell of the happy child she used to be. One fateful morning, Emily shuffled into daycare clutching her backpack. Her usual spark dimmed. Her teacher gasped upon noticing rope burns circling her delicate wrists. When questioned gently, Emily whispered, "I didn't listen." Those 3 words reverberated through the classroom like a gunshot, freezing everyone present. The teacher wasted no time reporting the incident to CPS, but once again, bureaucracy failed miserably. The caseworker accepted Rebecca's flimsy excuse that Emily had tied herself up pretending to be a cowboy and dismissed the report without further investigation. Suspense thickened as the audience grasped the horrifying truth. Nobody was stepping in to save this innocent child. Every ignored warning pushed Emily closer to the brink of catastrophe. Fueled by desperation, Margaret stormed into the CPS office, clutching folders filled with damning evidence. Photos of Emily's injuries stared back accusingly, accompanied by detailed accounts of behavioral changes, how she'd become withdrawn, fearful, and anxious overnight. Margaret pleaded with trembling hands, begging them to see what she saw, a child trapped in a nightmare. But the caseworker remained unmoved, reciting the same tired refrain. "Without concrete proof, we can't intervene." As Margaret left the building, tears streaming down her face, the weight of systemic failure pressed heavily on her shoulders. She knew deep down that time was running out for Emily, and there was nothing more she could do. This pivotal moment underscored the tragic reality. Systems designed to protect children were failing spectacularly. Behind closed doors, Devon orchestrated a masterclass in psychological manipulation, isolating Rebecca from anyone who might challenge his authority. He painted Margaret as a conniving woman hell-bent on stealing Emily away, planting seeds of doubt until Rebecca believed every word. Slowly but surely, he convinced her that Emily was too much trouble, framing discipline as love and cruelty as necessity. The night before Emily's tragic death paints a chilling portrait of escalating abuse and complicity. It begins with something as innocuous as spilled juice, a small accident that sets off a chain reaction of terror. Devon, already fueled by alcohol and rage, explodes when he sees the crimson stains spreading across the living room carpet. His voice booms through the house, "You're useless. Can't even keep your kid under control." Rebecca flinches but says nothing, too afraid to challenge him. Emily, wide-eyed and trembling, tries to apologize, but her words fall on deaf ears. Devon storms toward her, grabbing her arm roughly. "You need to learn respect," he snarls, dragging her toward the closet. He shoves her inside and slams the door shut, plunging her into darkness. Her muffled sobs echo through the thin walls, but Devon only yells louder, mocking her cries. Rebecca hesitates at first, torn between protecting her child and appeasing Devon. But fear takes hold, twisting her judgment. Slowly, she retrieves a length of rope from the kitchen drawer and follows Devon's lead. Together, they tie Emily's tiny hands behind her back, justifying their actions as discipline. As Emily whimpers in pain, Rebecca whispers, "This is for your own good." The irony is unbearable. What was meant to teach respect becomes the final act of betrayal. March 10, 2022, starts like any other day, but tension simmers beneath the surface. Dinner turns into a battleground when Emily refuses to eat her vegetables, pushing Devon over the edge. His temper ignites instantly, veins bulge in his neck as he slams his fist on the table. "You ungrateful little brat," he screams, yanking Emily out of her chair and dragging her upstairs. For hours, Emily's screams pierce the silence of the house, each cry growing weaker until they're finally silenced by duct tape pressed harshly over her mouth. Rebecca sits downstairs, clutching a pillow to her chest, paralyzed by guilt and fear. She hears every sound, the thuds against the walls, the muffled pleas, but does nothing. By morning, the house is eerily quiet. When Devon finally emerges, his face is unreadable. "Something's wrong," he mutters, nudging Rebecca upstairs. They find Emily lifeless on the floor, her body broken and battered. Panic sets in as Rebecca dials 911, sticking to the rehearsed lie. She fell down the stairs. But Detective Elliot Hayes knows better. This isn't an accident, it's a crime scene waiting to be unraveled. As detectives comb through the house, forensic evidence begins to tell a horrifying story. A dent in the wall near the staircase matches the shape and size of Emily's head injury, a clear sign she was struck repeatedly. Under UV light, bloodstains glow faintly on the carpet, revealing frantic attempts to clean up the scene. Ligature marks on Emily's wrists perfectly match electrical cords found discarded in the basement. Each clue paints a picture of calculated cruelty. The bindings weren't haphazard, they were methodical, designed to inflict maximum pain. Even the placement of the bloodstain on the wall suggests deliberate force rather than a simple fall. Every detail points to one undeniable truth: this was no accident. Someone wanted to punish Emily, and they went to extreme lengths to cover it up. Detective Hayes feels a mix of anger and sorrow as he pieces together the timeline. How could anyone do this to a child? And how many chances were missed to stop it? In the sterile confines of the interrogation room, emotions run high. Rebecca sits hunched over, her face buried in her hands. Across the table, Detective Hayes presses her relentlessly, presenting piece after piece of damning evidence. At first, she clings to the story about the stairs, but cracks begin to show. Tears stream down her face as she finally admits her role in tying Emily up. "I thought I was helping," she sobs, her voice barely audible. Devon said it was for her own good. Meanwhile, Devon remains stoic, refusing to break his silence. He leans back in his chair, arms crossed, projecting an air of defiance. But forensic DNA evidence changes everything. Investigators link Devon directly to Emily's injuries, including fibers from the ropes and skin cells found under her fingernails. Confronted with irrefutable proof, his facade crumbles slightly. Still, he refuses to take full responsibility, blaming Rebecca for enabling his actions. The contrast between their reactions is stark, Rebecca's raw vulnerability versus Devon's cold detachment. Both are guilty, yet neither fully accepts accountability. It's a heartbreaking glimpse into the dynamics of abuse and manipulation. Investigators dig deeper into Rebecca and Devon's phones, uncovering a trove of incriminating text messages. Conversations reveal disturbing discussions about punishments like time in the closet and teaching her a lesson. One exchange stands out. Devon writes, "She needs stricter discipline. Kids these days don't know how to behave." Rebecca replies, "Okay, whatever you think is best." These messages expose premeditation, shattering any defense of accidental harm. They also highlight the psychological manipulation at play, how Devon coerced Rebecca into compliance. What started as isolated incidents escalated into a pattern of systematic abuse, all documented in black and white text. Detectives present the messages during trial preparation, knowing they'll devastate jurors. Each word serves as a reminder of how unchecked power can corrupt and destroy. For Margaret, reading them is unbearable. "How could she let this happen?" she whispers, clutching the papers tightly. The answer lies somewhere between fear, ignorance, and systemic failure. On the witness stand, Margaret Lane fights to maintain composure, but her voice trembles with every word. She recounts her desperate attempts to save Emily, holding back tears as she describes filing complaint after complaint with CPS. "I showed them pictures of her bruises," she says, clutching a tissue. "I begged them to listen, but no one cared." Her testimony grows more emotional as she recalls Emily's final visit. "She hugged me so tight, like she didn't want to let go. She whispered, 'Don't leave me there.'" Margaret pauses, choking on her words. "And I failed her. I walked away, thinking maybe things would get better. But they didn't." The courtroom falls silent as Margaret breaks down, sobbing uncontrollably. Her grief is palpable, a visceral reminder of what happens when pleas for help go unanswered. Jurors exchange uneasy glances, visibly moved by her anguish. Margaret's testimony isn't just about accountability, it's a call to action, urging society to protect vulnerable children before it's too late. Internal reviews conducted after Emily's death reveal glaring flaws within Child Protective Services, CPS. Multiple red flags were ignored, dismissed as inconclusive or insufficient despite overwhelming evidence. Caseworkers admit prioritizing paperwork over proactive intervention, citing understaffing and bureaucratic hurdles. Public outrage grows as details emerge about missed opportunities to save Emily. Media outlets pick up the story, sparking nationwide debates about child welfare reform. Protesters gather outside government buildings, holding signs that read, "Never again," and "Protect our children." For Margaret, the revelations bring little comfort. "It shouldn't have taken my granddaughter's death to spark change," she says bitterly. Yet, amid the tragedy, hope flickers. Advocacy groups push for stronger laws, increased funding for CPS, and mandatory training for caseworkers. Emily's name becomes synonymous with a movement, a reminder that vigilance saves lives. The courtroom is tense as the jury delivers its verdict. Devon Cole, found guilty of capital murder, will spend the rest of his life behind bars without the possibility of parole. His face remains stoic, but there's a flicker of anger in his eyes. Anger at being caught, anger at the system that failed to protect him from accountability. Moments later, Rebecca Monroe pleads guilty to felony child endangerment, her voice trembling as she apologizes to Emily's memory. The judge slams down the gavel, sentencing her to 40 years in prison. For Margaret Lane, sitting silently in the front row, the verdict brings no solace. Justice has been served, but it feels hollow. No amount of punishment can undo what happened to Emily. As Rebecca is led away in handcuffs, she locks eyes with Margaret for a brief moment before breaking into sobs. Margaret looks away, unable to bear the sight. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarm survivors' advocates who call this case a wake-up call for society. Yet, the question lingers: could this tragedy have been prevented? In the weeks following the trial, Margaret struggles to piece her shattered life back together. Every morning, she visits Emily's grave, placing fresh flowers beneath the headstone engraved with her granddaughter's name. She sits quietly, talking to Emily as though she were still alive. "I'm sorry," she whispers through tears. "I should have done more." The community rallies around Margaret, organizing memorials and awareness campaigns in Emily's honor. Local schools host assemblies on recognizing signs of abuse, while volunteers distribute flyers listing helplines and resources. A mural depicting Emily painting flowers is unveiled in a nearby park, serving as both tribute and reminder. Despite the outpouring of support, Margaret feels weighed down by guilt. At night, she replays every decision, every missed opportunity, wondering if things could have ended differently. Her grief is raw, unrelenting, a testament to the cost of silence. During sentencing, prosecutors unveil a chilling revelation about Devon's true motives. Evidence shows he resented being forced into fatherhood after Rebecca regained custody of Emily. He hated sharing her attention, one prosecutor explains. Emily represented everything he despised: her innocence, her dependence on Rebecca, her mere existence. Testimonies reveal how Devon's jealousy spiraled into hatred, fueling his need to dominate and punish. He viewed Emily not as a child but as competition, someone stealing Rebecca's affection. This twisted mindset drove him to escalate the abuse until it culminated in tragedy. For those listening, the revelation adds another layer of horror to an already devastating story. It underscores how unchecked emotions can lead to unimaginable cruelty, and why vigilance is critical in protecting vulnerable children. As the narrator steps forward, their tone shifts from sorrow to urgency. This isn't just Emily's story, it's a warning, they say, addressing viewers directly. Child abuse thrives in silence. If you suspect something, speak up. Trust your instincts. You might be the only person willing to intervene. On screen, real-life resources appear: national helplines, websites offering guidance on reporting abuse, and links to advocacy groups working tirelessly to reform child welfare systems. The narrator emphasizes the importance of education, urging parents, teachers, neighbors, and friends to recognize red flags early. Stronger protections start with us, they conclude. We owe it to Emily, and to countless others like her, to ensure no child suffers in silence. Detective Elliot Hayes sits alone in his office late at night, staring at photos taped to a corkboard. Each image tells part of Emily's tragic story: the bloodstain on the wall, the ligature marks on her wrists, the bruises catalogued meticulously during autopsy. His mind drifts back to the crime scene, replaying moments where warning signs screamed louder than words. "I should have seen it sooner," he mutters, gripping his coffee mug tightly. The weight of failure presses heavily on his shoulders. But then, resolve hardens his expression. He vows never to ignore another warning sign, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. As the camera pans out, leaving Elliot bathed in dim light, the audience senses his determination. Saving lives requires action, not hesitation. The screen fades to black, then transitions to footage of Emily's artwork. Brightly colored paintings of flowers, butterflies, and sunlit meadows flash across the display, accompanied by soft instrumental music. Each piece reflects her boundless creativity and innocence, a stark contrast to the brutality she endured. Text overlays appear alongside the images. Emily Monroe, aged 3. Loved deeply. Lost tragically. Viewers are reminded of her untapped potential, the dreams she'll never fulfill, and the laughter silenced too soon. The tribute ends with a single sentence written in bold letters: "She mattered." Tears well up in the audience's eyes as the emotional impact settles, a poignant reminder of what was lost and what must never happen again. The narrator returns, their voice steady yet filled with emotion. True justice would have been saving Emily. But it's not too late to protect others like her. They pause, letting the gravity of their words sink in. Every child deserves safety, love, and a chance to grow. That responsibility lies with all of us. The screen fades to black, leaving only white text against the darkness. If you suspect abuse, speak up. You could save a life. These final words linger long after the video ends, etching themselves into the viewer's conscience. It's a powerful conclusion, one that transforms grief into action, ensuring Emily's legacy becomes a catalyst for change. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.